This is a tutorial on how to stretch canvas on stretcher bars, and I just finished this one, and you see how they look on the back, and it's just a matter of stapling it around the back. But one of the things I wanted you to be aware of is that all these stretcher bars have a raised edge so that the painting rides on this little top edge, and then it won't trace this inside edge of the wood. So if you just used like a piece of wood with no raised edge, over time it might start to trace this edge where you'll get like a little shadow kind of where this inside of the board is. So if you only have access to like lumber from a place like Menards, you can make a simple stretcher bar with a raised edge by taking a quarter round and just nailing it to the outside edge of a board that you would use for the back. And I just happen to have this quarter round here, but you can use the smallest quarter round you can find, which is about 1/4 of an inch. This one's way bigger than you would need, but you get the idea. Okay, the painting I'm going to be stretching to teach you how to do this is 42.5 by 26.5, and here it is. It's got a lot of nice texture to it, and so we start with the stretcher bar, and I've of course got that all together, and this is just basically a frame that is made for the purpose of stretching, that has this little raised edge on it, and it's all, you know, been measured out and everything. And this frame is one that gets a, or this painting is one that gets a frame. It's not just a gallery wrap where you don't have a frame on it, but it's one that we're putting a picture frame on. And what I like to do is start in the corners and line up where the corners should be, and of course you see how uneven this is. Like there's a lot of white here, and then it's real close here. So when you're measuring, you kind of have to figure on what the nearest the shortest distance is, because you don't want a bunch of white glops to show around the outside edge. So I start by finding the best corner, and what I usually do is use a hand staple gun first, because it doesn't drive the staples so deep into the wood. And what I'm doing now is just getting kind of a preliminary edge of where this stretcher frame is. And I plan on taking these staples out and doing a proper corner on it later, so I don't want them driven so deep into the wood. And you'll notice I keep working across from itself, where I go on one corner, then the opposite corner, then the next corner. And by the way, most canvases have enough of border that you can wrap around to the back of the canvas, but this one, the painting goes real close to the edge. I mean, if you look right here, it's almost touching the edge. So we start by getting the corners done. And then what I do is go to the center and pull that. And again, you can see how, you know, right here there's white that goes way up there, and then down here it's almost touching, so we have to, go where the white edge is going to be not seen once we get the frame on there. And in this case, I'm stapling right into the edge of the frame rather than the back of it, because they don't have enough canvas to wrap around to the back. And you'll notice I kind of grab the canvas and I'm tugging very hard, and then I pinch it between the board and hold it while I'm putting in a staple. And some of these preliminary staples, these first staples, might come out because I need to make sure I'm in a proper position for this canvas not to have a bunch of white that'll show around the edge. And so far I think we're going to get it the first time, but it's not uncommon to get it stretched with the first staples, and then notice I'm too far one way or the other. Like this, I could almost move the canvas down that way a little bit, but I think we're going to be okay. And so once it looks like it's positioned, now I'm going to turn it over and start using the air power stapler. And what I like to do is lay the piece on a board, so I'm turning the board rather than dragging the painting up and down on the table. So the board is taking the friction and not the painting. Because some paintings are more fragile than you'd think, and when you slide it up and down and back and forth, you can end up, scraping some of the edge of the paint off. And what I do is put in the center of the long side. Well, I should say between the center of the long side, because this is, now there's 3 staples in the long side. And then I go to the opposite side and do the same thing. This opposite side just has 1 staple in it, and so now I'm going to add the other 2. And again, I'm pulling tight both toward me and towards the outside edge. And then I continue on to the short members and go in between the staple that was put in the center of that to get our positioning for the left and right. So this one is, I've got enough canvas that I can grab from the back and staple onto the back. So I'm holding it, kind of jiggling it and pulling, and then careful not to staple into my fingers. This is a Boss Stitch 21680B stapler. It's got a 1/2 inch crown staple, and these happen to be 5/8 length, and they really grab and hold well, but this is not one that has a safety on it. So if I was to put this up to my hand and pull the trigger, it's going to shoot right into my hand. If it had a safety on it, then it would only shoot when I notice that it's up against something. Right now it'll shoot across the room if I just go like that. And at this point I have 3 staples on each member there, and I'm turning it over to just make sure that the positioning is good. I'm not worried about wrinkles or anything yet. And yeah, I think that's the good positioning. It's going to cover all the white on the edges. So now what I'll do is keep working between each staple and on opposite sides. So I start here, I've got a staple here and staple in the corner, so now I go between these 2 staples and pull and put another staple between, and then I do that all along this whole edge, is keep going between the staples that are there and putting one more staple in. I have a staple here and one here, so now I put one in here. And normally I let the canvas stay flat on the table and shoot the staples in and have the canvas just over the edge, but I want you to be able to see how I'm holding and pulling, so I lifted it up off the table. And now that I have 6 staples in that side, then I go to the opposite side and do that again, and I just keep working opposite where I was just at and pulling tight and go in between the staples. And you just keep doing that, working opposite. If you got lazy and tried to rush it, then just put a whole line of staples on one side and then go to the other side and put a whole line of staples in the other. You have a much more likely chance of having wrinkles in the end product. And ideally is to have this nice and taut where there's no wrinkles. And speaking of that, sometimes you run into canvases that I think the artist painted on a wrinkled canvas. So when that happens, one trick is to take a towel that is damp, where you can't wring water out of it, but that it's very damp, kind of like it would come out of a washing machine after the last spin cycle, and you lay that onto the back of the painting, and the goal is to try and get some humidity back in the painting, which would relax the canvas a little bit. And when you do that, then if you start pulling on it when the canvas has got some humidity and is more relaxed, you're more apt to get the wrinkles out. And but usually they just come out without having to do any wetting of the canvas. And I know sometimes you can have a canvas that's all done and just kind of miss the back of it, but I worry about it getting too much water that way. So this one's coming out pretty good. And I'm going to turn the camera off now and go through and try and finish the rest of it. Okay, now I've got staples in about every 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches. And now I'm going back to neaten up the corners that were kind of my preliminary staples. So I pull out the loose fitting staple that was done by hand, and then I kind of wrap it like a package, where I pull one end and staple, and then I push one end down and one end up so it's much like a package. But this frame, or this oil painting, is going to have a frame on it, and it also has almost no extra canvas around the edge, so I'm not getting, nearly as neat of an edge as I would get if they wanted this gallery wrapped. Where the idea of the gallery wrap is that you see the edge of the painting wrapped around the edge of the side of the stretcher bar. And I'm still going to go through and put in more staples, and I see a corner here that I think that could be better, so I'm going to take out some staples and pull harder in this upper right hand corner, and the goal is to make it as flat as can be from any different angle. And you want to hold the canvas up into the light so that you can see light coming from the side or the top or the bottom, and make sure that from any direction of light you don't see wrinkles in it. When I'm taking out staples that have been shot in with the air nailer, the air stapler, I use a little screwdriver and try and pry it underneath the staple, and then pull it out with a wire cutter. And sometimes they're in there pretty deep, so you have to do a lot of prying to get some of them out. Okay, here it is all done. And once I have staples that are about 2 to 3 inches apart, I get another look at it again, and if I feel like it needs it, I will even put the staples between those two staples, so they might be as little as like not even an inch apart. And that's pretty much what I did here. You can see they're usually 2-3 inches, and then once in a while, a little closer as needed. And if you're using if you're stretching canvases that are huge, of course you'd want a stretcher bar that has braces in it, like one here, and sometimes I'll even do braces that are in the corners, like that. But this is small enough, and the stretcher bars are wide enough. I didn't need any braces in it. Another thing that can happen once in a while is when you're working on a huge piece, especially, sometimes you get some stretcher bar material that's twisted and warped. Sometimes it lays on the saw bed and kind of rocks, or it twists a little bit, and you can use all your might to get it as perfect as possible, and sometimes it still will not lay flat, and sometimes you can press on it. Now this one's nice and flat, and it's not that huge, but I just finished framing a piece that was 85 3/4 by 72 1/2, and that was, the artist stretched his own canvas, and he had a nice perfect stretcher, nice and flat on it. But with something that big, it's not uncommon for them to kind of rock on the wall, where you press down and it kind of like teeter-totters up and down because it's not flat. And a trick to handle that is to use security hangers on all the four corners. That's these things that go in the bottom towards the corners, and there's a little T-shaped screw that goes in the wall, and so these are screwed to the back of the frame. And let me get a T-shaped screw here to show you. So here's what the hardware that gets screwed on the back of the frame looks like, or the back of the stretcher bar if you're using no frame. And that would be, you know, pretty close to the edge, but at the very bottom. And then here's the T-shaped screw that fits in that slot. So the idea is that this T goes into the slot, and then you have this special wrench that you slide underneath the painting, and then you crank the T so that it sits into the notch like this, so there's no pulling that out, and it kind of sucks it to the wall. And over the 40 years of doing this, I have tried everything with stretch canvases, like setting them under weights for a week, raising the one end that's down and lifting the one end that's up to put kind of opposite stress on it, and letting it sit for a long period of time. None of that really works, but this way is a way you can still use your stretch canvas and let it sit close to the wall. And so here's our painting all stretched, and this gets a black frame with I think it's an orange line in it, and I'll try and take a picture when it's all done. I haven't cut the frame yet, of course, because I want to see that the stretching is going to be perfect. Now, another thing too, when you're cutting a frame for these, what I do is I measure the edge that's got the folded over part, and then I cut the frame tight to that fold part. And this one isn't so thick, but some of them, you know, the fold sticks out quite a bit. So if it's tight to the fold, then you'll still have plenty of room of clearance along the rest of it, and it'll just be the corners that it's going to be a little bit tight. And so that's about it.